And, on Thursday last week, I had to have a diatribe about global warming and everything, but all aiming toward photosynthesis. And basically that what's going on in the world around us eventually is going to affect the ability of the ocean to produce oxygen, photosynthesis, and so on. So tonight, we need to actually talk about photosynthesis. And very, very briefly on Thursday, I had that last slide of photosynthesis, cyclic and non-cyclic. So I'll just remind you, I'm not going to put it up again. Cyclic is when the electrons return to the chlorophyll. Non-cyclic is when they end up in NADPH. We will be doing non-cyclic, starting with this. So this is the sun. Energy is coming down from the sun. I know it's true to life, but energy is coming down from the sun and will land in the chloroplast. The chloroplast is what contains the chlorophyll. And the chlorophyll is what actually does the photosynthesis. The chlorophyll captures the energy from the sun. So the chloroplast is basically the equivalent of a mitochondria. Now obviously we all have mitochondria. The plants, and I'll talk about the plants, but as you know, a lot of bacteria, the green algae and other things, lots of things do photosynthesis. We'll talk about plants because that's what we're used to. Anyhow, the chloroplast is essentially the energy producer for the plant, just like the mitochondria is for us. But really in this case, it's not so much producing energy as it is capturing energy from the sun. But this is the equivalent of our mitochondria. Now what's interesting about that is, if you remember, the mitochondria used to be a standalone bacteria. It has its own DNA and so on. The chloroplast does also. The chloroplast also has its own DNA. So the thought process is the chloroplast was probably also a standalone bacteria. And I don't actually know this, but I'm guessing that they might have been the same bacteria. That somehow that bacteria kind of merged itself with what became eukaryotic cells, either animals or plants. But they were, both cases, chloroplast and mitochondria, standalone bacteria, and even today, they still have their own DNA. So, right now, the chloroplast, the chlorophyll inside, is going to capture the sun's energy. And right away, that sun's energy is going to end up in what's called photosystem 2. Photosystem 2. Now the photo, of course, refers to light, obviously. Well, that's number 2. You're probably wondering what happened to number 1. Well, there is a number 1. Unfortunately, whoever did this work named the photosystems in order of discovery. Not in order of occurrence, but in order of discovery. So photosystem 2 was discovered second, but it occurs first. Photosystem 1 was discovered first, but it occurs second. Do with that what you will. So anyhow, there is a number 1, but this was discovered afterwards. The photosystem itself is basically a biochemical pathway, very similar to what we were doing with respiration. Glycolysis, the Krebs cycle. Those are pathways. The photosystem is a pathway. It's a sequence of reactions. And it contains P680. The P stands for pigment. The 680 is the wavelength of light that's being absorbed. But I want to qualify that. 680 is where it is most being absorbed. It is absorbing other wavelengths. It's kind of a bell-shaped curve. So the 680 is here. That's your 680. That's your 680. But you can absorb other wavelengths. That's just simply maximum. So it can do 600, 550, whatever. And the pigment, that is the chlorophyll. Now, talking about 680, let me remind you, although I'm going to ask you, what is the wavelength of visible light? You did that, pardon me? Yes, indeed. What's that second one?
47.
That's it, 700. 400 to 700, yeah, that's visible light. 400 to 700 nanometers. So this is right at the upper end. So it's in the red range. Okay, so photosystem 2, and particularly P680, is going to absorb the energy from the sun, and that energy is going to be used to split water. So water will be split into 4 hydrogen ions. What's another word for that? Hydrogen ion. One word.
Molecule?
What?
Hydroxide?
No, I think you said something else.
Proton?
Protons.
Oh.
Protons. Hydrogen ions are protons. Remember the hydrogen atom is 1 proton, 1 electron. So the positive ion means you took out an electron. So the hydrogen atom without the electron is a proton. Anyhow, 4 protons and 4 electrons. So essentially, the 4 hydrogens were taken apart into protons plus electrons. Now what's left over is oxygen. So the very, very first step of photosynthesis is the oxygenic step. You're looking at a little unsure.
Yeah.
About? No, not okay. What about what?
No, like I got a.
You're okay?
So is photosystem 2 called the oxygenic step?
This is the oxygenic step, yeah. And oxygenic, of course, just means it's making oxygen. The very first step is splitting water and basically splitting the hydrogen atoms into protons and electrons. And oxygen then actually is a waste product. Because for plants, oxygen is a waste product, just like for us, carbon dioxide is.
So oxygen is water.
No, oxygen. No, it makes oxygen. It splits water. It splits water to make oxygen. Yeah, the very first step is to split water, splitting the hydrogen, and producing oxygen. The oxygen, of course, is just simply released, just like we release carbon dioxide. Now, actually, there is a function for the protons, but we're not going to follow up on it. I do want to follow up on the electrons. So we have these 4 electrons, and the energy of the sun is still coming. You know, the sun hasn't turned off. So the energy is still coming. The P680 is still absorbing the energy. Water's already been split. So now that energy will be used to raise the energy level of the electrons. The energy level is being raised. Now, when you raise the energy level of something, what's being done? What's occurring? What happens to whatever it is? You added energy. Pardon me? More perfect. It becomes activated. It becomes more unstable. See, that's exactly what we did with glycolysis. We added energy basically to glucose, turning it into glucose 6-phosphate that destabilized the glucose. Well, that's what this is. We're adding energy to the electrons. They become unstable. There's also something else going on. Let me show it to you. So this is off the record. This is just information. So you all know that are wildly unstable. They cannot remain that way. They've got to get rid of the energy. Well, you can't really give it back to the sun. That's not going to happen. So instead, there is an electron transport chain. Now, it's not identical to ours. It's a different chain, but the concept is the same. It's a sequence of electron transfers. What? Yeah, series of redox reactions. But it's a bunch of electron transfers, and each time the electron is transferred, some energy is lost. So again, just like what we do. Again, it's a different pathway, but the concept's the same. So a lot of electron transfers, energy is lost, some of it will in fact be captured in the form of ATP. The rest of it will simply be lost as heat. And eventually, you get back to the starting point, at least in terms of energy. So in that electron transport chain, the electrons give back this extra energy they were given, so they restabilize. You got the ATP here, and now you've got some electrons. All of this is photosystem 2. Starting with P680, splitting water, making oxygen, increasing the energy level of the electrons, having them come down this pathway. All of that is photosystem 2. So like I was commenting, it is another biochemical pathway, just like glycolysis and so on and so on. So at this point, so all that's photosystem 2, starting here, photosystem 1. Photosystem 1 happens.
Is there a need for this one like there was for photosystem 2?
Is it what?
And need for it?
Well, photosystem 1. Photosystem 1. But this one has P700. P700. It's still recording. Yeah. Yeah, we're good. Gotta keep that thing on. At any rate, so photosystem 1, this one has P700 instead of P680, so it kind of broadens the wavelength range that energy can be absorbed by doing both 680 and 700. And again, it's a bell-shaped curve thing, so it is a little broader. Now, one fundamental difference here, besides the wavelength, is P700 does not split water. It does not split water. So think it through. If it does not split water, what else does it not do? Carol? Yes, perfect. If it does not split water, it does not make oxygen. Because the oxygen from before came from splitting water. In this case, no water, no oxygen. So this step would be antioxygenic. So the P700 is not splitting water, it's not making oxygen. Obvious question, what does it do? Well, what it does do is it takes the electrons and shoots them back up again. It's capturing the energy of the sun one more time. The electrons, back up they go. So once again unstable, same as before. Once again unstable. So another electron transport chain. This one's different. Again, same concept. Electrons and all that. Same concept. But this time, no ATP. In fact, the energy will be captured down the bottom in NADPH. See, this is your non-cyclic, your NADPH. So, the products of photosystem 2 are oxygen and ATP. The products of photosystem 1 is simply NADPH.
You said products of photosystem 2 are oxygen and ATP,
Yes.
and photosystem 1, NADP.
I'm sorry.
Would you repeat that again?
Yeah, the products of photosystem 2 are oxygen ATP. The product of photosystem 1 NADPH.
Can you explain what you mean that the electrons go back up?
Well, because her question is, what do I mean by the electrons going back up again? In both cases, energy, or after photosystem 2, water was split by P680, and then the electrons were shot up by energy from the sun, because the P680 is still gathering energy. But now that water's been split, now the energy is used to push them up. The same thing occurs in photosystem 1. P700 this time is not splitting water, not making oxygen. The energy that's being gathered from the sun, this time is being used to push the electrons back up a second time. That's the same thing, they're just being pushed into a higher energy level, higher energy range.
I'm just trying to understand the P680 and the P700. So is it the plant that's absorbing the light? Like
Yeah.
where's so the electrons going in the plant?
Oh, yeah.
sometimes, and then it's being
Absolutely.
back to the sky.
Yeah, remember, the light is going into the plant. The plant contains chloroplasts. So the sun's rays have to be able to reach the plant's chloroplasts.
And then the electron, is it coming back to the same plant or is it finding?
Oh, no, it's the same cell, same chloroplast.
After it goes, it rises up,
Yeah.
and it comes back down.
Yeah.
After the ATP.
Yeah.
Back to the same plant.
Yeah. Same plant, not even just the same plant, it's in the same cell.
So how far away is it going from the plant then for it to be?
It's not leaving the plant. It's staying in the plant.
The energy level is.
Remember, I was talking dependent reaction because obviously it requires sunlight.
Light dependent reaction.
Yeah. Because it depends on sunlight.
Light dependent reaction,
Light dependent.
light dependent reaction.
Yes. Now there is one slight flaw, actually two flaws. One is photosynthesis is supposed to be using carbon dioxide. No carbon dioxide. And second, it's supposed to be making glucose. So there's another handout. Just testing, trying to see if you would fall over or not. There's no handout, but that's how I kept introducing all my other handouts. No, but there's no handout, but there is another pathway. There's another pathway.